please assist us and let the participants outside that the program director is here. And that can only suggest one thing, that the program will start momentarily. It's not in my nature to start 35 minutes after the time that I promised you. We would have been better off starting 35 minutes before the time that we promised. Time is money. The entire universe moves on the basis of time. So the time that we have lost will not be able to catch up. I understand there are just some issues with the accreditation, but we have requested that they release those participants who are still at the accreditations. So the second day of the conference, we will start the day today by having the Statistician General give us an overview. It's a mammoth task for him. I was telling him that he's probably the first Statistician General of the Republic to be invited to a human rights conference. Because there is no right in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to statistics. But you will realize that everything about life revolves around mathematics. So us going to sleep, waking up, and eating is mathematical. And the decisions that we take, they are equally mathematical and statistical. So we are just waiting for the members of the executive who are here, but they're just walking in. We don't want to do an injustice to them to miss out what the Statistician General will be saying. By the way, the Statistician General is not a department like the Department of Justice. They are an independent office. So they speak freely like the governor of the Reserve Bank. They can tell the president without any fear. And the Statistician General, I think you have a security of tenure. You are not worried like us about career limiting, this and that. You speak as you wish. So the conference will be happy to get some views from you. So in terms of the structure, once the Statistician General is done, the first panel that we're going to take is on transforming and building a resilient economy in order to fight poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment, which will be facilitated by Dr. Hlengani Matebula. And the chairperson of the economic cluster, Minister Kensani Kubai, will lead that discussion. And the General Secretary of SAFTU was here yesterday. He's in the panel. That will come after the statistics. I'm not sure where he's seated. It will help if the members of the panel could come closer so that we don't waste time. Charles, can you check for us if they are gravitating closer to the auditorium? The members of the executives have arrived. With my permission, you don't have to stand up. Gabriel, you can lead them here. Ushers, please tell the participants outside that the program is starting now. May I request the Statistician General to come and join me here? Okay, I was warming a microphone. I hadn't started yet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conference. The conference is being called to order. The second day of the conference begins now. Minister Lamula, Minister Kubai, Deputy Minister Mahaule, Deputy Minister Masondo, Deputy Minister Chabalala, MEC of Health for the province of Limpopo, and MEC of Transport, Free State, the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, judges that are here, members of the legislature, ambassadors and high commissioners, former and still serving. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second day of the conference. Without much ado, as you will see from the program, the first speaker for us, what we call a scene-setting presentation, will be the Statistician General, Risenga Maluleke. We, SG, want to appreciate that you made time to come and join a very irrelevant conference on state of human rights in the Republic. But we'll want to give you an opportunity to make your presentation and do what you do best. Thank you very much.
Program Director, let me thank you and indicate that when you come and stand before an audience like this, and the speaker who spoke before you is much taller than you, you have to adjust the mic first. Having said that, let me take note of the ministers that are here. Minister Lamula for Department of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Let me take note of Minister Mamulu Kubai. Let me take note of Deputy Ministers Masondo, Mahaule, and Chabalala, and MECs that are here from Limpopo, MEC for Health, MEC for Transport. And it's very interesting, Deputy Minister Masondo, that when you have two Masondos sitting next to one another, you just have to say that we know that there is justice, but there is also, some level of blood nepotism. So let me take note of our Masondo as well. Members of Parliament, as always, let me take note of Chairperson of Portfolio Committee, Commissioners for the South African Human Rights Commission, and indeed the Academia, the Greek community. Let me take note of all dignitaries that are here, including excellencies, if there are people from the diplomatic space. But let me say, there are also my colleagues, directors general that are here. But let me say all protocols observed so that I save myself from trouble. I'm not a very good public speaker, so I always struggle. So in the event I struggle with putting my message across, just finish for me. Either way you finish, I'm forever comfortable. I have two disclaimers. I know many of you have run away from class when there was mathematics being taught. But let me give you assurances of the highest order that by the time I conclude the presentation, many of you would want to pass your mathematics with distinction. So, but also I'm not one of those best speakers who speak reading line for line. So I have brought some numbers to explain my story. I will start with the national economy, and everyone wonders, but where do numbers and human rights come together? The definition of statistics is facts of the state. Simplest definition. So now, let us look at how we have performed in the fourth quarter from the side of the economy. We performed at 0.1. Look at the left-hand side. So I'll make it simple. I will always refer you to the left, to the right, and I will always refer you to the color. And if you want to know how I have learned left and right, my teacher who taught me arithmetic in primary school. When inspectors came to see and look at the work he's doing, he used to tell us, if you know the answer, my children, raise your right hand. If you don't know the answer, raise your left hand. And he would only point those whose hands were right all the time. So that's how I've learned to know left and right. Now, on the left, this is how our economy has performed in the fourth quarter of 2023. 0.1%. It's not even a percent. 0.1%, meaning it's very close to a zero. There were those who were speculating that this economy would go on recession. Some were even using jargon, saying it's technical recession. There is no difference between technical recession and recession. They are all recession. It doesn't matter whether I'm hungry or I'm technically hungry. What matters is I'm hungry. So there's no difference between those. It's technical recession is a jargon that economists and us statisticians use. So when it's very close to a zero, the point is it hasn't grown much. DG, you said I can talk the truth. Even if he didn't give me the permission, I don't have to tell you what you want to hear. I have to tell you what you need to know so that we can make our country a better place. Now, having grown at that level, it means it's very close to a zero. It could actually have fallen at a zero and fallen below a zero and go into negative. Now, I'm often asked, Statistician General, tell us about this number is too big or small. I've dealt with so many big numbers and so many small numbers. To me, they are all numbers. So now, having said so, let us look on the right-hand side. That was the performance of the year, the whole year, 2023, sitting at 0.6%, slightly above 0.5%. But in case you want to know the size of our economy, look at the right-hand side. Don't worry much. I'll start on the right-hand side. As of the fourth quarter, it was sitting at 1.158 trillion. So our economy in 3 months, it churns about slightly above $1 trillion. It means that per month, it churns slightly above 300 billion. When I presented to the youth one other time, they asked me, Statistician General, tell us which billion is ours in the 300 billion and the trillions. I could not answer. So I think there are a lot of policymakers here. They will answer that question. Now, let us go to the left. We can see that our economy was performing well all the way from 2014, rising steadily. Then came COVID. That's when we dropped. You can see there's a drop somewhere there where we fell below $1 trillion in the second quarter of 2020. That was the highest time of COVID-19. But in case you do not know how it has performed over years, you can see 2 lines brown dropping down. Once you see a line dropping down brown, it means that we were having what we call a negative growth. So in 2008, there was a global economic meltdown all over the world. But we all know, especially those of us who grew up in the villages, that when it rains in the mountains, the valleys will take longer to get water. So it is. In 2009, we had a growth that went in the negative. 2010, we recovered. We went all the way. But if we look after that small drop that is in brown in number, and going all the way from 2010, 2011, our economy hasn't grown that much. Then came COVID. We can see the 6% in the negative that grew, dropped. It means our economy in 2020 didn't grow well. We recovered 4.7. Now I'm talking on the right-hand side. The height that you see there. But that one is an aberration. We came from a low growth, so we should not be misled by that. In the last 2 years, 2022, 2023, it grew at 1.9% and 0.6% on the right-hand side. Now, having said so, let us look at the sectors that are driving our economy. Let us start from the left. Let us follow the orange color for starters. It was number 1 coming out in 1994, my apologies. It was number 1. It went all the way. It started dropping. So manufacturing has been dropping. If we look, And it was number 1 in 1994, number 2 in 2002, 2012 it became number 4, 2020 it became number 4. It is starting to rise again. It is rising. It's actually number 3 now as of the last quarter, sitting very close to trade. So the point is, every country that wants to drive its economy must make sure manufacturing works well. Let us look at China. China are driving their manufacturing, and they even take a lot from us and manufacture on our behalf. Where is our economy congregated? It's in Gauteng. Let us look at Gauteng. Gauteng accounts for 33% of our economy on the left-hand side. It is followed by KwaZulu-Natal, 15.9, almost 16%, 13.9% Western Cape, all the way to the Northern Cape, 2.2% right at the bottom. And of course, the growth that we have registered in 2022, we can see that Gauteng showed the biggest growth. It was followed by the Western Cape. The darker the color, the stronger the growth. The lighter the color, the challenges. Now, let us go to labor. I know you want to know much about work. Let us talk about what has happened. Program director, when you want me to finish talking, tell me to finish. But I'm going to ask them if they want me to stop. He says I must stop. My time is up. By a popular vote, they have said I must continue. So who are you to subvert the will of the people? Let us proceed. Let us start on the left-hand side with the blue color. As of the fourth quarter 2023, the number of people employed in South Africa were 16.7 million. And indeed, when we say employed, we include those that are in elementary work and domestic workership. I always hear that we want to get some kind of a decent work. According to the International Labour Organization, if you work for a minimum of an hour per week, you are employed. So all you need is 4 hours per month, a minimum of 4 hours. These other issues of 40 hours that we can get are just a luxury. But the benefit is I could be working for a very wealthy person and I go to clean for an hour a week. I could be selling on the street corner and I sell for an hour, fed cooks in the morning, and I make my 2,000 rands or my 4,000 rands and I come home. So I'm employed. So here we include those that are self-employed. Let me mention that this 16.7 million has actually gone back to surpass where we were during COVID. Before COVID, we were sitting at 16.4 million. We dropped to about 14.1 million. COVID knocked 2.3 million jobs out of our markets. We have recovered. We have even surpassed that. The red color is the number of those that are not employed, 7.9 million. These are people who are actively looking for employment. I'm not talking about discouraged work seekers. The gray color, dark gray color, 3 million, those are discouraged work seekers. And others who indicated they are students, they are too old to work, too young, they are sick, or they are living with disability are on the right-hand side. Having said so, I've often been asked, why do you include children of 15 years? I'm saying if they are at school, we don't count them. They are in the not economically active on the right-hand side. But when they are there and working on the farms, if you go to the Western Cape, Northern Cape, everywhere you will find them. And in terms of the Labor Relations Act, it says it is illegal to hire anyone less than 14 years and younger. So if you are 15 years and older and you are not at school and you are looking for employment, we count you. I don't make the laws. I only count. And I count only truths. Because I count what people are saying. I don't count what I see. So if I find you smoking a cigarette and I ask you, do you smoke? And you puff into the air and you say, I don't smoke. I write what you say, not what I think. Official statistics are about what people are saying, not what we think. So this is a very good barometer. Now, let's go back to the 7.9 million. That is what we call the unemployment rate. So it sits at 32.1% at the bottom. But when we talk about those that are discouraged, we include them, the 3 million plus another 800,000 who said we didn't look for employment for other reasons than discouragement, but had employment been available, I would have taken it up. We then come to 800,000. And when we include those, that is the 7.9 million, 3 million plus 800,000, we come to 11.7 million. And that is the expanded unemployment rate sitting at 41.1%. So now, we always make these numbers available, both of them. But the headline is the 32.1% because in the National Development Plan, we track the unemployment rate at a narrow level. Now, let us look at the provinces, how they are performing. The Eastern Cape has the highest unemployment rate. Let us follow the colors first. Brown is official, gray is expanded. The Eastern Cape has the highest unemployment rate official, but when we go to expanded, the gray color is in the Northwest. The Northwest is leading. So it means we have more discouraged work seekers in the Northwest than we have in the Eastern Cape. But when we look at the bottom, the unemployment rate that is lowest consistently is in the Western Cape, and even their gray is actually the smallest. Now, when we look at these numbers, I want us to compare where we see a bigger jump between the red color and the gray color. I said if you don't understand, I'll use colors. Now, if the gap is wider between the red and the gray, someone switched off my presentation. It's not me. Look at what they do to me. I also have human rights, by the way, so don't switch off my presentation. Now, the gap that is wider between the red or brown color all the way to gray shows that we have more discouraged work seekers. So in the rural areas or rural provinces, we have a lot of discouraged work seekers. One of the things that maybe my DG will not say here, but I will say, is that the apartheid city space is still prevalent in South Africa. It excludes a lot of people based on skin color. It excludes a lot of people largely because they are female. And we see it. We haven't actually gone to build cities that will serve under systems of democracy. That is a big challenge because the majority of the people in rural areas, those who are relatively poorer and sometimes struggle and are discouraged, want to use their last money to come to city centers, but they are far away from city centers. Now, in this regard, when we have our fancy houses in the leafy suburbs, and the people come and establish informal settlement next to us, we tend to say that they will lower the prices of our houses. But the poor always follow the rich. And as they follow the rich, what they do is that they want to stay next to the rich so that they can eat from the crumbs that fall from the rich man and the rich woman's desk. So that it's cheaper for them to go to work. That is why they are in our street corners, and we should not wish them away because they are part of us. It's not me, it's the numbers. Be careful who you clap for before I finish because I have more truths to tell. Now, let us look. The pink color at the bottom is the national unemployment rate. Now, let us start from the left. The Eastern Cape unemployment rate all the way in the last 10 years has been higher than national. Any line that you see cutting into the pink color, the red line, it shows that we are below the national unemployment rate. And we see that a lot on the right-hand side in the Western Cape. Now, when we talk about black African, colored, Indian, Asian, look at the left. The black Africans are trudging it hard because their unemployment rate is always higher than the national. It's not cutting into the pink color. The colors follow next. with their challenges of unemployment. The Indian Asians and the whites are right in the midst of the pink color. And one thing that we see on everything is that the Indian Asians are catching up with the whites in all aspects of life. The challenges remain for black Africans and the colored population group. Let us talk about poverty. Don't follow all the numbers, just follow the yellow line in the middle. Anyone in a household who doesn't earn 1,058 rands per month, whether they work or they don't work, as long as they get some income, it means that they are poor according to the lower bound poverty line. Now, I often get asked, is this 350 enough, statistician general, or what? It's not my space. In South Africa, there's a way in which you drive. You keep left, and when you want to pass, you go right. I stay in my lane on the left. I will not talk about monies. I will just measure and tell the truths as they sustain. So now, what we are saying is that if you earn less than 760 rands, you are likely to be exposed to hunger. So what we are saying, as of 2015, the yellow color again, 40% of our population was poor. And indeed, when we use the lower bound poverty line. But something is happening. And let's look at what happens next. When we have what we call the SAMPI, South African Multidimensional Poverty Index, that is when government intervenes. Free electricity, free water, food parcels and everything. Look at the poverty line. It was sitting at 17.9 on the left-hand side. It has dropped all the way to 7. So there are times when, especially times like now, that is election time, I will hear that, no, people are bringing food parcels. I don't worry about those things. My job is to count. One thing I'll tell you is that when people get services, free services from government, the poverty drops to about 7%, which is almost the same like the global level. Having said so, what are the biggest drivers of poverty? Don't worry about all the colors, worry about the top 2 colors, the red and the purple. Unemployment and years of schooling. So if you don't have enough levels of education, higher levels of education, you are not able to get employed. And as such, you will remain poor. Having said so, unemployment and years of schooling account for 63% as drivers of poverty. So let's drive education, education, education. I'm talking about grants now. Have I finished my time? He says I must stop. Should I stop or continue? My friend, by popular vote. He has only one vote. You have the majority of the votes. Now, let us look at, in terms of grants, one of the things that we tend to see is that there's an increase in the percentage of individuals who access social grants, and in 2022 and beyond, it was mainly due to the social relief distress grant. So that social relief distress grant has been assisting a lot. Let me also mention that what we are seeing is that with the increase of the number of people who are getting social grants, those that are exposed to hunger are dropping. So these social grants are helping. Now, let us look. Let us start with the blue color on the left-hand side. Those are salaries, and we take them by province. We are saying that in the Eastern Cape, let's start with RSA, from the bottom, it's number 3, South Africa. Only 53% of the income in households comes from salaries. The rest comes from grants, remittances, and other sources, as well as pensions. Pensions actually account for the gray or black color on the right-hand side, which is a very small share. Having said so, in the Eastern Cape, about 39%, 38.9% to be exact, comes from salaries. The rest comes from our province, your Eastern Cape, your Limpopo and the like, rely a lot more on grants and remittances. But there's a catch. The catch is that I always send my mother money in the village. And I want us to go back to that slide that I spoke about, the slide that says 33% of money is controlled, or the economy is in Gauteng. So when I send my mother money, she receives it in Malamulele. And then the following day, she goes to the bank, she withdraws the money, she gets some services, and then she, at ShopRite or Score or whatever, Spar, when she finishes, Spar or ShopRite banks the money the following day back to Gauteng. So money went to the village to procure services, it's back in Gauteng. And economists will tell us a currency that doesn't circulate 7 times in any neighborhood will never make a difference. So when we see that spaza shop, when we see that corner cafe, if we don't support them, they will never make a difference. If we think we'll always buy from urban centers alone, and I'm not advocating that we should not buy from urban centers, but I'm saying, how do we make a difference? How many people do we have in South Africa? As of the 2nd of February, it's 62,027,503. It's a long number. So I want to make it easy for you. If someone asks you how many people are in South Africa, just say 62 million. It's easy. It's easy to remember, and it will work well for us. Where are they? The majority of them are in Gauteng, 15.1 million, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, 12.4 million on the right-hand side, 7.4 million in the Western Cape, all the way to the Northern Cape at the bottom. But let us start on the left again. KwaZulu-Natal was the most populous province. It has been overtaken by Gauteng. And I get asked when I present in KwaZulu-Natal, Statistician General, tell us, how comes we have been overtaken by Gauteng when we even have polygamy here and there are many of us? And I say that there is a concept called fertility. Fertility is the number of children born, live births, to a woman in her lifetime. That is fertility. We don't use men. We don't use men because men are not a reliable indicator of fertility. You will never know the number of children they have had until you go to their funeral. So now, if I'm married in polygamy and I have children with the one wife and the 3 children with the other wife, we treat fertility per wife. That's how it works. So in this regard, the highest fertility we find are in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. Premier Makura asked me, and now Premier Lesufi asks me, SG, how comes my population, while it's growing, my fertility is the lowest? And I tell him, Premier, you are leading a group of very lazy people. Because in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, that's where we have the highest fertility. Now, let us go on the right-hand side. We are seeing the Western Cape, the pink color or the purple color. They were in 1996 from the left-hand side, they were number 5. They moved, as of 2011, they overtook Limpopo. When Bushbuck-Ridge was moved, Buhlabela, then they overtook Limpopo. Now they've even overtaken the Eastern Cape. And I will tell us what happens. Let us first start here. Every province has gained between 2011 and 2022. The gray color is 2011 and every province. And we can see Gauteng has gained the most, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, followed by the Western Cape. But now, let us look at what has happened. The gray color on the left are people who left the province. On the right-hand side, the green color are people who came into the province. Gauteng, with its lowest fertility, has had the highest number of people coming in from outside Gauteng. About 400,000 between the two censuses, followed by the Western Cape, and indeed all the way northwest, Mpumalanga. Those like Limpopo and the Eastern Cape have actually had lesser number of people coming in. They actually had more people leaving, although all provinces have gained. Now, let us look at what drives the population in Gauteng. When we talk about Gauteng, I think here they've brought now the Eastern Cape. I should skip this one. I wanted to talk more about Gauteng. What drives the population from Gauteng internally is people who come from Limpopo. They are actually moving into Gauteng in larger numbers. It's followed by people. If you don't believe me, just look at who is talking to you now. You will start to know the truth. Now, the people from Limpopo, they arrive here as students, and then they don't leave from Gauteng. They get married, they start families here. And as we move, they are followed by people from outside South Africa. 50% of people who come from outside South Africa choose Gauteng as their destination. I often get accused. I count everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa. The role of the statistician general is not to worry about legality. Because, and I know I'm not advocating for lawlessness, because as we are seated here now, including irregular migrants, they are using water, electricity, and ablution facilities. When you drive on the road doesn't ask you first if you are legal or illegal. When you switch on the light in your house, it doesn't ask you, are you legal or illegal? Having said so, now let us look at, now we have understood the size of our populations. I want to start here. Gauteng has the largest population. It has the largest economy. It is right at the top in terms of the per capita GDP. So it means that it is actually sustaining very well for the people. But let us look, KwaZulu-Natal is the second one. But let us look, the second one is the West, in terms of population is KwaZulu-Natal. But now in terms of the economy is the Western Cape. The two of them are above the national average. The rest go down. And let us look at KwaZulu-Natal. It's third from the bottom. While it has more population, its economy is not as strong to carry the weight of the population. And the Eastern Cape is right at the bottom. So let us look at Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. They have the highest fertility. They have the highest number of children born. Yet when it comes to economic weight per capita, they are the lowest. And this is how it works with fertility. If myself and my wife have 2 children, we haven't contributed to the population. We have just replaced ourselves. It's 2 people giving birth to 2 people. So if you want to contribute, go and increase the numbers. It's not me. It's the theory of fertility. Now, where are the people? 50% of our population in the country is around the 17 municipalities, metros as well, starting from the city of Joburg, city of Cape Town, all the way to Rustenburg on the right-hand side. So now, we can see on the map the colors of where 50% of our population is actually in those parts. I usually say when I present to politicians that I would like to, if I were to start a political party, I would start there, where the 50% of the population is. Now, where are the people? How many are they? Out of the 62 million, 50.5 million are black Africans accounting for 81%, 81.4 to be exact, followed by the colored population group at 5.1 million accounting for 8.2%, followed by the white population group, 4.5 million accounting for 7.3%, all the way to Indian Asians, 1.7 million accounting for 2.7%. With the white population group, there's something that is happening. In 2011, while they have grown, the other population groups, especially the black Africans, have grown the most. The share of whites is dropping. It was 7.3% in 2011. It was 9% in 2011. 2022, it's at 7.3%. It's because young whites are leaving. And when they leave with their capacity to contribute to fertility and the birth of children. Now, who are the many men and women, male and female? It is a proven theory all over the world that there are more women in every society than men. However, when it comes to birth, there are more boy children born than girl children. In South Africa, for every 100 children born who are girls, we actually have 102. Some countries go to 104. So what happens? Males are not as strong as women. So between ages 0 to 5, they die in large numbers. And then after that, when they are teenagers, they engage in dangerous enterprises, driving very fast on the road and starting fights, and they lose life. So then they get overtaken by females. That is why if you look at the pink color for women, it starts like almost equal like that of males. And as we go to the right, there are more women in our country than men. Now I want to know here whether we have more women or more men. Because there's something that happens. When there is women cooking on the roadside or tilling the land with hand hoes, you will always see entirely all women. But the moment government puts gas stoves to cook on the roadside, all of a sudden men appear from nowhere. When government brings tractors to assist women, all of a sudden the drivers are male. Where does it change? Don't answer me now. I'll answer you in the next numbers. Now, let us look at the median age. It's sitting at 28 years. That is at the middle. In 1996, it was sitting at 22 years. It means that our people are living longer. But on the left, we have more children, 0 to 14, 16.4 million, followed by young people 15 to 34 years, sitting at 21.6 million. And of course, adults, the pink color and the gray color, 6.1 million on the right-hand side. Those are people older than 60. So we have, if you take the first darker green color and the green color, we have our population that is relatively young in the country. More than 60% of our population are people under the age of 35. Education. I'll start moving faster. We asked about children 0 to 4, whether they had access to early childhood development. The black color in the middle is the average of the country. So we are saying that if you start on the left-hand side, about 39.8%, about 40% of our children were not in any facility. The rest, 60% for the country, were in a crèche, in a preschool, in a daycare facility with a go-go, a playground at the community. Having said so, let us look right at the bottom. We have more challenges in the Northwest and the Northern Cape, where more than 50% of children 0 to 4 are not on any early childhood facility. As we can see, the gray color on the left is actually much more bigger for those two provinces. Now, let us look at those who said they had no schooling on the left-hand side in 1996. They were sitting at 19.1%. They have dropped now to 6.9%. When we come to the next bar, some primary, some or completed primary dropping. When they finished secondary, it starts to drop, but some secondary is dropping. But let us look at the second bar from the right-hand side. Grade 12 or matric, it's rising. 1996, it was at 16.3 million percent. It's now sitting at 37.8%. So we have a lot of people that have completed matric between 1996 and now. On the right-hand side, post-matric qualifications, 1996, we were sitting at 7.1%. We are now sitting at 12.2%. We are not rising as we have seen with people with matric. Housing. Do I still have some time? He wants me to wrap up now. Should I wrap up? Yeah. So now we want to wrap up. Let us start with households. Households were 9.1 million in 1996. right at the top. At the bottom now we are sitting at 17.8 million. What are households versus family? Households do not have to be blood related. If I stay in Limpopo and my brother stays in the Western Cape, we are not a household, we are a family. We are a household if we eat from the same pot, even if we are not blood related. Now, formal housing. 1996 on the left-hand side, 65% of our people had formal housing. This includes low-cost housing. As of 2022 on the right-hand side, 88.5%. And as formal housing increases, traditional housing in gray and informal housing in pink or purple is dropping, as we can see as we move towards the right-hand side. Let us talk about service delivery. Electricity. The yellow, the color, the more we have electricity connected. Now, the main source of lighting, not lightning. I know some will promise you lightning when you wrong them, but lighting. Now, when I presented these numbers, DG, to the president, I said, if we resolve challenges of load shedding, the network is there. We could actually keep the country yellow, as we can see on the right-hand side. Starting in 1996 on the left, it was largely in the Western Cape where we were yellow, 80% to 100%. We increased in 2001, Western Cape was universal. We covered all the way to Gauteng. 2011, the country was becoming yellow. And of course, on the right-hand side, 2022, now we have all connectivity. We are not talking about disruptions, load shedding and the like. We are talking about the main source for lighting, not for cooking, because cooking is much more expensive and people don't access it. And of course, when we look at water, we are saying that in 1996 on the left, the darker the color, the more water we have. To 2001, 2011, we were improving with water. But in 2022 on the right-hand side, we can see right at the top that there was a regress in Limpopo. The darker color, which was 80% and above, started dropping. But of course, if we look from 1996 on the eastern seaboard, on the eastern side, KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape, where we have some amongst the poorest municipalities, they haven't been doing well with water, and they are close to water. If you look at the seaside, they are close. They see water every day at sea, but they don't have water. All the way to Mhlabuyalingana, where my Sangoma comes from, in case you don't know how I became statistician general. Piped water in a dwelling. Let us focus on the two lower colors. We are saying that 82.4% of our people said that they had piped water inside a dwelling or in the yard. Those at the top who had no access to piped water, the gray or the black color, were higher in 1996. The number is dropping, as we can see. That gray color on the right-hand side starts to decrease. And of course, when we talk about percentage of households that had access to piped water, the gray color on the left tells us that we have more challenges in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, whereas in the Western Cape at the bottom, the gray color on the left is too small. They have more piped water in Gauteng inside the dwelling, as well as in the Western Cape at the bottom. Now, let us look at people that have flush toilets, the green color. 70.8% the whole country. But when we go to Limpopo on the left, on the right-hand side, only 32.5%. When you don't have water, you will have challenges to have a flush toilet. There are a lot more of pit latrines in the pink color and the gray color that we see. Access to internet. Let us start with the gray color. At the top, in 2011, there were 64.8% of people who said they had no access to internet. 21.1% said as of 2022 they had no access to internet. But when we go to the next level, when those who use cell phones to access internet are sitting at 60.5% on the right-hand side, the green color. 16.3% said that they use in 2011. So there's a lot more cell phones now, and people use their cell phones to access internet. So if I were to reach out to people, I would use messaging through cell phones, than having them to reach out at work. The next slide says Ndihela Kwala. Those who understand what it means will understand. But it has a history. Don't clap hands yet for me, I haven't finished. It has a history. When I was young, growing up in the village, our mothers could not read and write. So we were their scribes, writing letters on their behalf to our fathers who were migrant workers in urban centers. Our mothers could not finish a letter with, "I love you, my husband." As children, we were not supposed to hear those words coming out of our mothers' mouths because we were going to go deaf according to village legend. And they could not finish a letter by saying, "I miss you, my husband." We were not supposed to write those words on behalf of our mothers because according to village legend, we were going to go blind. So mother and father had to find a way to finish a letter when they write. And they would always say, "Ndihela Kwala." In Shivenda, they would say, "Ndifelela Hanefa." In Setswana, ke fetsa hona fa. In Sepedi, ke fetsa hona mo. In Isindebele, they would say, "Ngiyathokoza." In East Xhosa, they would say, "Ngiceda khona apha ngomkhulu umbulelo." Yet, the English and Afrikaans used to say, I miss you, my husband, my boyfriend. And the Afrikaan would say, "Ek lief vir jou." And in isiZulu, they would say, "Amaningi anginawo." Now, never and never again, Washu Mandela once said, should we allow any section of our society to be excluded, even on issues that matter the most to their heart, like love, that they have to defer to a proxy, when we have numbers to tell us the truth, where we are making progress and where progress is lacking. So let me assure you, Program Director, my DG, that for now, amaningang now, and the next slide is blank, I thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you, Statistician General. From the popular leader now to the dictator. You know, when you run a program, you can't afford to run it on the populism. You have to be a dictator because you have to manage time. But SG, thank you very much. I think this helps a great deal for the next panels that are coming. Yeah. In fact, after you explained this in Ndihela Kwala, someone asked me, so does it mean that if a Shangaan man says Ndihela Kwala means I love you? I said, hey, I don't know. So okay, we take the economy now. We won't break. Prof Hlengani, the President Kosatu, General Secretary Saftu, CEO of Black Business Council. Who else? I don't have the program here. I can't remember the other names, but the members of the panel on the economy, if you may please start moving to the stage. Prof, I hand over to you. I hope you are not going to be a populist. You would, yeah. Thank you very much, Prof.
DG, you can be certain that it's not contagious. The Statistician General is my neighbor by village. But I certainly not going to follow on his footstep. So my panel is approaching. I see this head thing has taken South Africa by storm. So the Statistician General has had a lot to say, which relates to the stuff that we're going to talk about here. My name is Hlengani Matebula. I come from the University of Limpopo. I see that the designers of the program struggled to locate me purely because of the other hats that I wear, which are related to government. But I apply my trade at the University of Limpopo. The DG has indicated to me that we are going to conform to the time that we were allocated. And I do know that the issues that we're going to deal with here are quite serious and in certain instances quite emotional. And I've been assured that everybody that's in the room or should be in the room, it is in the room. And so we have close to 1,000 people in attendance. With that means that we are going to have a challenge in managing time. However, we are going to have to do what we can to stick to the time that we have been allocated. That means that we will allocate the time that the minister has been given to give an overview, and the panelists will have 10 minutes each to give their comments. Now, that doesn't mean that they can say everything to end all that they wanted to say. There will still be time for questions. Now, this is how we're going to run the question time. With almost 1,000 people, it's going to be impossible for everyone to ask a question or even to make a comment. However, what we'll do is that we'll allow people to ask the question without preamble. All right? Let's just get each other right here. A question without a preamble, right? And once the questions have been answered, I'll allow people that will have comments so that the people that are responsible for policy making and that needs to hear the things that you want to say can hear you. So differentiate between wanting to ask a question and to wanting to make a comment. In both instances, we can't have 10 people asking or even making a comment. It means at some point, I will cut the number of the people that are going to have to make those comments or the questions. Now let's start. I think what the Statistician General has indicated to us has been very clear. And if you simply take the numbers that he has given, and there's been improvement from the numbers that I had, which is that 46 out of 100 people of a working age, which is between 15 and 64, were employed as at 2022. That translated to about 31% of people in the labor space in that category of people that are in working age, 15 to 64. And that will be based on your narrow definition, or alternatively, if you then go and include the expanded definition, that number rises quite significantly, more so if you look at the fact that that number relates to 2009, 2008. But if you go to 2022, that number rises to 34.5 on the narrow definition to about 45%. And I see the Statistician General has revised that number to about 41%. Now, what has bedeviled our economy, at least from 2008, 2009, will be about 5 things, and some of them the Statistician General has covered. That will have included the a global financial crisis, followed by COVID, then the Russia and Ukraine war. You might be surprised that you are not in Russia, nor are you in Ukraine, but our economy does affected by things that happens outside the borders of this country. The KZN floods and the 21 July unrest in KZN. Now, if you follow what the Statistician General has said around issues of employment in KZN, you are then going to ask a question, but why will KZN be making such an impact on how our economy perform in any manner? You will recognize that there is a huge port in KZN that brings a number of things that ensures that our country does operate. You will as well appreciate that there is a huge manufacturing space in respect of a car manufacturer that's there. We do know that the other is sitting in the Eastern Cape. Now, what do the unemployment figures or even the economy lack of productivity has to do with anything that all of us have to look at? And is this centered only in Gauteng, or where all of us will tend to agree that it is a center? No, actually, if you look at the fault lines, you will find that the fault lines reflect what the SG has just indicated, which is racial, class, gender, and geographic distribution, followed by age. And if you look at the South African Reserve Bank's quarterly bulletin of June 2022, it starts to tell you the issues that relates to metric, and I thought that the Statistician General would go into this issue, but he didn't go into it in as detail as I would have liked him to say. But let me just briefly say what it indicates. In relation to people with metric and those without metric, you will find that people that with metric, and that will tell you that this is the youth, that about 36.5% of those are likely not to be employed, whereas, which is those that have metric. And then those that do not have metric, the number will go to about 39.8, which you can round it up to about 40%. So it then starts to tell you the impact of education and the type of education that our children do get. I do know that in our panel we do have the CEO of the Black Business Council, but we should be able to acknowledge that government does not create jobs. Government should create an environment conducive for the private sector to be able to create jobs. And that means, in reality, 75% of the economy or even jobs is stimulated by the private sector. The question is, Minister, do we have the private sector in this room? Do we even have it in this panel? Are we sitting here talking to ourselves when the people that must make the huge impact are outside there? I therefore give you this space, Minister, and I will look at my time as you present.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matebula, for those introductory remarks. Acknowledgement of the NCOP chair, Ntate Masondo, ministers who are here. Minister Lamola is our host minister, deputy ministers present, colleagues, fellow panelists. I'm not going to go into all acknowledgements just to save time. I think the topic is quite appropriate as we look in terms of what we have to do or what we have done in 30 years in terms of our economy, but more importantly, how do we link that to the Bill of Rights? For me, the basis of the Bill of Rights as we talk in terms of economic development and growth, it's around starting with the issue of the right of work as we deal with the issue of unemployment, of people or poverty and inequality as our triple challenges that we've got to respond to. There's been quite a lot of initiatives that government has took in terms of responding to this area of work. When we look at labor laws that we have been able to pass over the 30 years, we are able to see that we've made quite progress. We've been able to deal with the issues of decent income in terms of basic income earning and level, and also just setting those parameters within our policies, but also in terms of the implementation. Again, when we look in terms of the Bill of Rights, the freedom for trade, occupation, and profession, we can safely say that quite a number of us are able to call ourselves profession and entered professions that were preserved for the few in the past within the advent of democracy. Work has been done to ensure that there's equal participation, not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of race, class, and age. And that is part of what we can account as what we have been able to achieve in the 30 years as we reflect in terms of our human rights, but also what this government has done. If we look in terms of trade as well, it has been an equal opportunity that we have provided as government for many people to be able to trade and do business in various sectors of the population. This in terms of the legislation that we have been able to pass, but also in terms of opportunities not only within the borders of our country, but be able to allow even for those who are intending to extend their trade beyond our borders in terms of our export market. Again, when I spoke about the issues of labor relations, our laws that have provided and protected, the issues in terms of property. So we can safely say from policy point of view, we've been able to achieve quite a lot in terms of ensuring that our policy formulation, our legislation, but also in terms of implementation, we are there. What has been a challenge in terms of the South African economy and what we have to deal with, it's around the transformational agenda, but also ensuring that we can be able to grow the economy beyond where we've seen. I think I don't want to repeat what the statistician general has said in terms of our pedestrian growth in terms of economy. And there are areas that we've got to pay attention to and enablers that we've got to focus on. In 2020, as we were responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, as government, we released the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. In that plan, one of the issues why we were particularly emphatic around the reconstruction, and which I think we still have a long way to go, it was an acknowledgement that we've got an economy that is not inclusive, an economy that continues to perpetuate the exclusion of the previously disadvantaged, an economy where in terms of the face of poverty in the country remains that of a black woman, as we have seen pre-1994. And therefore that work needs to be continued, emphasized, and also be focused around the issue. And I'll go into the areas, what we intended to do and what we continue to do as government in addressing those areas. But again, one of the issues I think I need to flag in this platform as we deal with the issues of human rights is accusation to us as government that we perpetuate apartheid. I'm one of the ministers, for example, who have been taken to court when we were implementing what we believed were transformational agendas, where others were feeling that what we are doing is actually excluding the others. And perhaps this is a platform where we could be able to reflect upon and deal with more in detail. I must reflect, I'm not going to be too long because it's a panel program director or facilitator of the panel. The issue for us as government is to utilize our public spending to be able to assist in terms of transformation of our economy, so that majority of those who have been excluded can continue to participate. Now, when we look in terms of our BEE policies, the intention of BEE policies is to ensure that as we transform the sectors, we are able to bring in participants who are coming from previously disadvantaged communities. It has had its flaws as we reflect in terms of the analysis. You can talk from the point of fronting, those who would come as owners or captains of the industries with big businesses, taking their domestic workers and making them shareholders in almost cheating government in terms of the real achievement of transformation, and would not be able to see the transformation that we envisaged. moving to the areas where indeed some of the others will accuse BE for having benefited the few, not the majority. And when the reflection of this came, that's why government took a decision to say, let's move it for just BE, but do it in terms of broad-based, to try and bring in even workers to have ownership, even community schemes to be able to do that. We're currently at the process of reviewing and to analyze where the gaps have been, but also to say what are the things that we need to do to close those gaps. And I must reiterate, I do not believe that, and from government, we do not believe that we should throw the baby with the bathwater because of the weaknesses that existed with BEE as a transformatory tool should be thrown out. We do believe that we must tighten up the screws where there are loose ends and continue to implement transformation so that the economy can continue to be an economy where majority of the people participates. We are currently in Parliament where we are processing a bill which is called Public Procurement Bill. In this bill, the intention is to utilize the state resources or the state funding as a tool to transform. And one of the areas that we advocate for as government is to say there is importance that we must have the set-asides. Set aside so that we do not continue to see women at the back foot, but have a set aside that ensures women to participate in the sector. I can say, for example, in my portfolio as Minister of Human Settlements, we have been able to implement the 40% set aside for women participation in the economy, in the construction sector, utilizing our own grants as a tool. And all the provinces currently, as I speak, we've just done an evaluation and we're reporting to women's sectors on the 8th of March. We have seen totality of all our provinces complying with 40% set aside with our public funding. And that is something that is possible. One of the areas that we envisage to do is to include people with disability in the economic mainstream. And this set aside about that, young people participating. Now, do we, as we do this, and one of the questions that comes regularly, you'd remember when AfriForum and Solidarity took me to court when we implemented the Tourism Recovery Fund. Their argument in court was particularly to say, you are perpetuating discrimination because there must be equal opportunity for all those who participate. And the argument has been, how do you determine a race when another person is 2 kilometers away from the other? It can be an equal or a just participation or a just competition. And that's why the issue of transformation should be understood in that context. That let's try and bring everybody to an equal footing so that we can be able to achieve the inclusive society. Our economy will not be sustainable unless we are able to have majority of South Africans feeling that they are part of the economy and they own this economy. And that's part of our issue and our agenda in transforming our economy. So it's important, I thought, in this platform, Minister Lamola, as we deal with issues of human rights, we deal with the issues of the Bill of Rights. The issue of redress remains a critical point when we deal with the economy to be able to address, but not address it to the point that others are feeling that this is not part of their country, therefore they are being made not to feel as South Africans, but to understand that continuously there is a past that we must address and a past that we must deal with, face it so that we can heal properly, but also be able to deal with the future, all of us working together to build a sustainable economy. There's work that needs to be done. We have to work together in transforming our sectors. One of the areas around industrialization is critical. Ensuring that localization can be a tool to ensure that we include most of the participants in our economy. So program director and facilitator, I'm not going to be long. I just thought these are just the teasers and what I want to reflect as we start the panel and to be able to reflect from where we are sitting, why the imperative of us transforming the economy and how do we reflect in linking that to the Bill of Rights in terms of achieving or celebrating our achievements of 30 years, but also reflecting on the gaps that we are seeing as government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. You really have given back some time. I'm hoping that the Matabane will follow suit. Hanki.
Thank Thank you very much, Program Director. And good morning, everyone. I think for the sake of time, we'll just say all protocol observed. I really wish I had the job of the Statistician General, because he is not supposed to come with any solution. He just tells us the problems as they are. And DG Mashabane, thank you very much, and Minister Lamola, for inviting us to this event. We don't take it for granted. So we are in 30 years of excuse me, of democracy, and we do acknowledge that a lot of progress have been made. I think we won't be honest if we say progress has not been made. We do acknowledge that a lot of progress has been made, but we are sitting now in a country where 92% of the population, which is black population, it includes coloreds and Indians, that 92% of blacks are owning less than 5% of their own economy in 30 years. So which tells you that we need to find a different way of addressing our challenges. And the Statistician General has indicated in his figures that there's a huge unemployment problem. So when we look at the figures that the Statistician General has indicated, the people who are employed is 16.7 million people. And then people who are unemployed, including those who are not looking for jobs, is 13.4 million people. But out of the 16.7 million people, I think the Statistician General, maybe in future, is to indicate how many people are in the bracket of paying tax. Because I think there are around 7 million people who are paying tax in South Africa, which tells you 7 million people are carrying 60 million people. And it tells you that that is not sustainable on its own. So we need to find a solution. And then in our view, the solution that has been tried in the past 30 years, even though it's very, very necessary, it's not sustainable on its own. Because in our view, we've been trying to solve most of our problems through grants. And that on its own is not sustainable, mainly because when you give me a grant, the money has got no opportunity of coming back to government. And what other countries are doing, we'll give one example. In Canada, and as I'm coming to my solution, my proposal, in Canada they fund people to prospect for mining rights. And they have adopted an approach that says, if you fund 10 people to prospect, 9 people are likely to fail, but the one person that succeeds is likely to bring so much money that will take care of the 9 people who failed. And I think that is the proposal we're making, to say we need to, as the very same energy that we are using to promote and offer grants, we should use the very same energy to fund black and small businesses and women-owned businesses, businesses owned by people living with disabilities. But fund them in the same way that the Canadians are doing, to say, if we fund 10 companies, there's a possibility that 9 will fail, but the one that succeeds becomes big. It employs more people, which then helps government in removing people from grants. Because if people are employed, then they'll move away from grants. But the company itself will be able to pay more tax. The people who are employed will pay more tax. And that way, you'll be able to grow the economy. And we're not saying grants are not necessary. I think The statistician general has also indicated that the grants have helped people move away from poverty. But that should not necessarily be the only solution that we think we have. We should move to a solution that says, let me spend the money in such a way that I can, or I stand a better chance of getting the money back. And that way can only be done through funding of small businesses, women-owned businesses, businesses owned by black people. And that way, we will be able to deal with the issue that was raised by the National Development Plan 2030. And remember, we're in 2024, 2030 is just around the corner. In the NDP, we're supposed to create, if we want to deal with unemployment decisively, we're supposed to create 11 million jobs, and 90% of those jobs are supposed to come from small business, which will be black-owned businesses, businesses owned by women. But so far, we are not necessarily doing that well in that front, because we are not focusing all our energies that we are in a crisis, and the crisis is, as the problem statement says, is unemployment, poverty, and underdevelopment. So to do that, you have to do it in such a way that you put money aside. Even if you put 10% of the money that we pay for grants, it should make a huge, huge difference. And that way, because the majority of the people who participate in that funding will be black, that way we'll be able to move the 5% or less than 5% that we own as black people in the economy to at least maybe 30% to 50%. Thank you very much, Prof.
I thought, Hanki, you would reflect on the issues around the BEE that the minister has spoken about and the progress that a black business has made over the past 30 years and showcase some businesses that we may have created. But anyway, maybe when we go into questions, you'll come to that. Mervyn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to everyone. As they say, all protocol observed. Mr. Chair, I might not also be addressing the issue you think I might be. I think it's without any doubt that much progress has been made over the last 30 years. I think we all accept that. If we don't, then, well, perhaps we live in a foreign country, because the Statistician General has laid it all out for us as clearly. The one thing that the Statistician General did not speak about, or perhaps I was sleeping or nodding off, you can correct me later, is the question around the consumer price index inflation, which has a major impact on ordinary South Africans, on households. And that is the area of work where my organization, the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, works around. And so I just want to reflect a little bit and paint a small picture about what happens in that area. So the main contributor, the main driver of CPI inflation, the main driver of that which takes away the value of your money, is food and food prices. Now, our Constitution and Bill of Rights also speak about food, the right of every South African to food. In fact, it also speaks about the right of all our children to nutrition. So I just want to little reflect on that and paint the current picture around what is going on in that area and what we need to do perhaps as an economic issue. So food is both about dignity, but food is also a major part of our economy. So the first thing I want to say is that when we look from a household perspective, so if we look at from the perspective of the grantee, grant person receiving it, or from the perspective of the worker, or whatever, then we see that most people in South Africa are net buyers of food. We go to the store to get our food. Whether we should or shouldn't, that's not the debate. The fact is that we go to the store in order to procure our food. And of course, when we go to the store, we need to have money in our pocket. And so let's look at the issue of money. Now, one of the great achievements of the last 30 years has been the introduction of the national minimum wage. For the first time in democratic South Africa, we have a floor for wages. However, it seems to be that much more progress needs to be done in that area, because the level of our national minimum wage is still part of the colonial apartheid trajectory of extremely low wages. An example. So if you had earned at the level of a national minimum wage this month, you would have earned something in the region of about 4,300 rand. It cost a household of 7 with a food basket of 44 basic foods, 5,277. Can you see the discrepancy already? But when you dig a little bit deeper and you ask working class households how they spend their money, they will tell you that transport will cost something like 1,680, or about 39% of the value of the wage. Electricity will cost them 350 kilowatts, something like 900 rand, which is about 20% of the value of that wage. And that leaves that household or that worker with 1,683 rand. Now, the statistician general told us, and I take him at his word, because he knows, he counts, that for every one worker in South Africa, you have around about 3 other people who are not employed. And if you're part of the working class, you share your wage with those. So let's look at, once you've paid transport and electricity, you're left with 1,600. You have to share that to buy food for 4 people. You will end up with something like 420 rand per person, way below the food poverty line of 760. If we look, for instance, at the child support grant, a grant that reaches about 13 million South African children, perhaps one of the greatest, in my view, achievements of our democracy, because the focus is on eradicating child poverty. And if you can eradicate child poverty, you can begin to address intergenerational poverty traps. But it is 510 rand. While my organization, based on our stats, works out that it will cost about 900 rand to feed a child a proper nutritious meal each day of the month. So there is something that has to be done, not only from the perspective of human dignity, but also from the perspective of food as part of our economy. And if you want to see what undernutrition has done in our country, then only look at the health statistic of stunting. 30% of our boy children under the age of 5 are stunted, and research has shown that children who are stunted before the age of 5 are more likely to end up, when they enter the labor force as laborers, they will not be able to reap the value of the education investment that we have made as a country, and we make massive education investments. They will enter the labor force as laborers, and more likely than not, they will earn too little to feed their children a proper nutritious meal. Meaning the poverty cycle, the intergenerational poverty cycle, will continue. So having considered that, it seems clear that as we approach beyond our 30 years, that we now have to continue to work at expanding our economy, but expanding our economy in a manner that allows for workers to earn, yes, a decent wage, Mr. Statistician General. And it seems to us that a decent wage would mean that you will be able to feed your children and you will be able to buy your basic services. Because if I can't do that, why am I working? Why am I getting up in the morning? So that is an area we still need to work at. But it seems to us also that from an economic point of view, that we need to transform our food system. Currently, we have too little farmers farming for too many people. And so we go back to the issue of land. We go back to the issue of smallholder agriculture, bringing more people into the economy of food, so that at some level we will be able to ensure that not only the prices of food is brought down, but also that more people become involved in the economy. And it seems to us that the future economy of South Africa is built, in reality, on the food we eat today. What we eat today determines the life I can live in my body. And when I enter the economy, I enter the economy as a human person. And so it is of absolute importance that we begin to look at that area of economic activity. I thank you.
Thanks so much, Mervyn. The President, your stage is yours.
Thank you very much, DG. Let me rise on the protocols that have been observed. Indeed, COSATU would want to add in affirming that 30 years of 3 decades of democracy have brought change, but I think more still needs to be done. We want to premise our input by saying workers' rights are human rights. And we're saying that the two concepts are interlinked and should not be separated. This is why COSATU was formed, not only to defeat apartheid, but also to improve the working and living conditions of workers. The apartheid economy was based on the exploitation and suppression of human rights of black workers. Workers' struggles and the struggles to defeat apartheid were indivisible. The struggle post-1994 to improve workers' rights and the conditions of the working class communities remain intrinsically linked. Chair, we want to also move and say that workers' rights must be respected. Our labor laws spell out the essence of workers' rights, from the right to work in a safe environment to compensation for injury on duty, for unemployment insurance to maternity and parental leave, from paid time off to overtime pay, from the right to collective bargaining to the right to equal pay for work of equal value, from the right to form a trade union to the right to strike and many others. Respecting workers' rights is not only a legal obligation, but also critically to promoting labor market stability and economy productivity. The right to work. Employment is essential to survive, to live, to take care of one's family. We live in a free market economy where the most essential items, from food to clothing, from warmth to shelter, from transport to electricity, all of that requires